branded an ugly high school grad and disowned by my family. 10 years later, I met them at my sister's wedding. Her husband asked, "You know her?" I said, "More than you think." 10 years. A decade of silence, of rejection, of reinventing myself from the ashes. And now I stood at the entrance of my sister's lavish wedding, a phantom guest, my heart thundering not with joy, but with a terrifying purpose. In my hand, I clutched a simple manila folder, a folder containing secrets that would not only shatter their meticulously crafted perfect family facade, but burn it to the ground. To truly understand why I was there that day, we have to go back. Back to my childhood in Fairfield, Connecticut. Picture-perfect lawns, picture-perfect houses, and beneath it all, perfectly curated lies. Our sprawling 6-bedroom colonial, with its heated pool and tennis court, was a monument to our family's flawless image. My father, James Mitchell, a renowned heart surgeon, and my mother, Elizabeth, the epitome of a polished socialite. Their lives were a carefully constructed performance for the entire town. Amanda, my sister, was born 3 years after me. From the moment she arrived, I adored her. She was my shadow, my best friend. I'd read her bedtime stories, patiently braid her hair for Westfield Academy, and act as her fierce protector against any mean girls. We whispered secrets under blanket forts, our pinky promises sealed with childhood dreams of being in each other's weddings. When thunderstorms rattled the house, she'd crawl into my bed, and I'd hold her tight until she drifted off. "Becca," she'd whisper, her voice small. "Promise we'll always be sisters, no matter what." "I promise, Mandy," I'd reply, using her special nickname. Nothing could ever come between us. But that perfect facade concealed a festering rot. I was 14 when I first glimpsed the ugly truth. I overheard my father on the phone, his voice dropping into a tone I'd never heard, a sickeningly sweet intimacy he reserved for someone who wasn't my mother. When I confronted him, the air crackled with a new kind of terror. He slapped me. Hard. It was the first time he had ever laid a hand on me. "You will never speak of this to anyone," he hissed, his eyes colder than ice. "Especially not your mother. This is adult business that doesn't concern you." My mother, bless her oblivious heart, medicated her unspoken knowledge with expensive vodka, hidden in water bottles. By midday, her words would slur, her movements becoming too precise. I'd often find her passed out in the sunroom, a convenient headache, her excuse at dinner. As Amanda and I navigated our teenage years, we reacted to this toxic home in starkly opposite ways. I became a rebel. I questioned everything, dyed my hair black, broke curfew, and challenged my father's blatant hypocrisy at every turn. Amanda, however, doubled down on perfection. Straight A's, student council president, resume building volunteer work, and a meticulously curated social media presence. "Why do you have to make everything so difficult?" she'd plead after another explosive argument between me and Dad. "Just play along. It's easier for everyone." "Because it's all fake, Mandy." I'd shoot back, my voice raw with frustration. "Don't you see how messed up this family is?" But she didn't want to see. She thrived on his approval, basking in the praise he lavished upon her, while I became an afterthought. "And this is Rebecca," he'd say dismissively in public, introducing her as his brilliant daughter. The beginning of the end arrived on my 18th birthday. My father had insisted on a sophisticated dinner at the country club, not for me, but for the optics, the Mitchell family's coming-of-age spectacle. During the dinner, I saw it again, his hand lingering far too long on our 25-year-old event coordinator's lower back. Later, searching for more champagne, I found them kissing in his office. Something inside me simply snapped. I returned to the private dining room, where 30 distinguished guests, family, friends, business associates, were enjoying dessert. My hand shaking, I grabbed a spoon and clinked my glass. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. The room fell silent. My mother's face went white. Amanda looked utterly mortified. My father's expression twisted from shock to pure fury in a heartbeat. "Rebecca is clearly intoxicated," he announced smoothly, a forced laugh. "Making inappropriate jokes. Jessica is a family friend helping with tonight's event." Perhaps it's time we wrap up the evening. Within 30 minutes, guests were ushered out with polite apologies and hastily distributed gift bags. Back home, the explosion was inevitable. "You ungrateful little bitch," he roared, pacing our marble kitchen. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Those people are hospital board members, donors, colleagues." "Good." I shot back, my own anger a roaring fire. "Let them see who you really are. Who I really am." He laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "I'm the man who gave you everything. This house, your education, the clothes on your back. While you've given nothing but embarrassment in return." My mother sat at the kitchen island, staring blankly into her wine glass, utterly absent. Amanda stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Becca, how could you?" she whispered, her voice laced with pain. "You've ruined everything." That was the moment I truly understood. I was completely, terrifyingly alone in that house full of people. "I want you out," my father said, his voice suddenly calm, chillingly so. "You have two choices. Keep your mouth shut about family matters, apologize to everyone at the club, and follow the rules of this house, or leave and never come back." I looked at my mother, silently pleading for support. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I turned to Amanda, desperate. "Mandy, you know I'm telling the truth." She shook her head, tears still falling. "You're being selfish and dramatic, Becca. You always need to be the center of attention, even if it hurts everyone else." Her words, from my sister, cut deeper than any of my father's roars ever could. "Fine," I said, my voice cracking, barely audible. "I'll leave." I packed a single backpack with clothes, toiletries, and a few cherished photos. My father watched from my bedroom doorway, arms crossed, a silent, unforgiving judge. "Your credit cards have been canceled," he informed me. "Your car is leased in my name, so the keys stay here." He handed me 5 crisp $100 bills. "This is more generous than you deserve. Don't contact us. Don't come back. And don't use our name to gain sympathy. As far as we're concerned, you're dead to us now." I walked out the front door on a chilly October night, 18 years old, with $500 and a backpack. No one came after me. No one. The first year was a brutal education in survival. I bounced between grimy shelters and the generosity of friends' couches until their parents inevitably grew uncomfortable. I worked any minimum wage job I could find: cashier at a gas station, overnight stalker, dishwasher at a greasy diner. Showers were a luxury earned by cleaning locker rooms at a gym. Libraries became my daytime sanctuary, warm and safe. Fast food joints, if I bought one small coffee, became my office. Not once, not a single time, did I receive a call, a text, an email from my family. It was as if Rebecca Mitchell had truly died on her 18th birthday, just as my father had decreed. Rock bottom hit 6 months after I left home. I was fired from that cashier job after falling asleep at the register, utterly depleted after a 30-hour stretch without sleep. That night, huddled in the cold, unforgiving corner of a bus station, my meager possessions scattered around me, I made a silent, burning promise to myself. I would not just survive. I would succeed. And someday, I would make my father regret throwing me away. The very next morning, a sliver of stubborn hope ignited within me. I walked into Hartford Community College. My excellent high school transcripts, a relic of my past life, opened doors to need-based scholarships and financial aid. I found a room to rent in a shabby house, sharing it with 4 other struggling students. I juggled 3 jobs: a barista in the mornings, a library assistant in the afternoons, and a server at a bustling restaurant on weekends. My schedule was a relentless grind: classes from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., work until midnight, study until 3 a.m., for hours of sleep, then repeat. Ramen noodles and day-old pastries were my gourmet meals. Thrift store clothes were my wardrobe. I cut my own hair. But for the first time, I was living authentically, unshackled from the suffocating weight of my family's expectations. During my second semester, I enrolled in an Introduction to Law course. That's where I met Professor Linda Harris. She was everything I aspired to be: brilliant, composed, her presence commanding respect without ever demanding it. When I aced our first exam, she asked me to stay after class. "You have a remarkable analytical mind, Rebecca," she said, peering at me over her reading glasses. "But you look utterly exhausted. Is everything all right?" Her genuine concern, a rare commodity in my life, chipped away at the formidable walls I had built. Before I knew it, the whole story came tumbling out: my family, the ultimatum, my desperate struggle to stay afloat. Instead of pity, her eyes held understanding. "I was homeless for a time in my 20s, she revealed, her voice soft. "My path wasn't easy either. But look at me now. Tenured professor, published author, expert witness in major cases." Professor Harris became more than a mentor. She became the mother figure I desperately needed. She helped me apply for additional scholarships, occasionally invited me for a real, home-cooked meal, and most importantly, she believed in me when I could barely believe in myself. "You have fire in you," she'd tell me, her gaze piercing. "That's rare and valuable. Channel it into your education." With her unwavering guidance, I graduated with honors and a paralegal certification. This allowed me to work at a small local firm while applying to law schools. When acceptance letters started rolling in, including one from Columbia with a partial scholarship, Professor Harris helped me navigate the labyrinthine financial aid process and even co-signed a student loan. Pay it forward someday was all she asked. Law school was a paradox. Harder intellectually than community college, but in many ways, easier. I had stable housing, proper nutrition, and Professor Harris checking in regularly. I devoured my studies, excelling particularly in financial crimes and healthcare law. The intricate web of insurance fraud, Medicare regulations, and medical malpractice utterly captivated me. After graduation, I accepted a position at Donovan Wright and Pearson, a prestigious Manhattan firm specializing in corporate law and financial crimes. Like every new associate, I started in the trenches: 80-hour work weeks, mind-numbing document review, endless coffee runs for partners. But I outworked everyone. I volunteered for the toughest cases, staying late, always the last one to leave. By my 5th year, I had earned a promotion to junior partner, the youngest in the firm's history. I had a sleek apartment in Brooklyn, a wardrobe of tailored suits, and the undeniable respect of my colleagues. The scared, rejected girl who walked out of her home with $500 was gone. In her place stood a confident woman who controlled her own destiny. And then, the universe delivered the ultimate cosmic joke. Or perhaps, the ultimate cosmic justice. "Rebecca, we need you on the Princeton Medical Group investigation," senior partner William Donovan said, dropping a thick file onto my desk. "Potential Medicare fraud, unnecessary procedures, kickbacks from medical device companies. Right up your alley." I nodded, already flipping through the file. "Who's the primary target?" "Chief of Cardiology, Dr. James Mitchell." The words hit me like a physical blow. The file slipped from my numb fingers, papers scattering across my office floor. "Are you all right?" William asked, rushing to help me. "Fine," I choked out, trying to regain composure. "Just surprised. I've heard of him. His reputation." William gave a grim smile. "Well, that reputation might be built on fraud. The numbers don't add up. He's performing 3 times the national average of certain procedures with questionable necessity. We need to build a solid case before taking this to the FBI." That night, I stared at my father's professional headshot in the case file. 10 years older, more gray at his temples, but still the same confident, charming smile that had once captivated patients, colleagues, and mistresses alike. The file detailed his expanded practice, a second clinic, a vacation home in the Hamptons. His net worth had tripled since he'd cast me out. All of it potentially built on fraud, on unnecessary surgeries performed on vulnerable patients. My first, professional instinct screamed, recuse yourself. Conflict of interest, but a deeper, darker, more primal thought surged through me. Who better to expose James Mitchell than the daughter he had brutally discarded? I knew his patterns, his weaknesses, his arrogance. I understood how his mind worked. For 6 months, I led the investigation, my personal connection a closely guarded secret. I interviewed former patients, the brave nurses who finally spoke up, the billing specialists who had seen too much. I meticulously combed through thousands of medical records, identifying the horrifying patterns of suspicious procedures. I traced the money, following trails from medical device companies through shell corporations, eventually leading to offshore accounts. The evidence was damning, undeniable. My father had built his empire by recommending invasive, risky cardiac procedures to patients who didn't need them, procedures that generated massive insurance payouts. He'd falsified test results to justify his interventions and shamelessly taken kickbacks from device manufacturers for using their products. The most sickening discovery? Several patients had suffered severe complications or even died from procedures they never needed in the first place. As I was assembling the final, crushing case file, an elegant cream envelope arrived in my office. Inside was an invitation to Amanda's wedding. To Thomas Caldwell III, son of Senator Thomas Caldwell Jr. The wedding would take place at the Greenwich Country Club, the very same gilded cage where I had exposed my father's affair 10 years earlier. Attached was a handwritten note, Amanda's familiar cursive, *, Becca, I know we have history, but I want my sister at my wedding. Please come. *, I stared at that invitation for hours, a million questions screaming in my mind. How had they found me after all these years? What agenda lay behind this sudden outreach? Was it a genuine, heartfelt attempt at reconciliation? A calculated political move by the Caldwells to ensure no family skeletons remained hidden? Or something far more sinister? Whatever the reason, the timing was unnerving, almost a cruel joke. Just as I finalized the investigation that could utterly destroy my father, a door to my past, a past I thought I had buried, swung wide open. The wedding invitation sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. Each morning, I'd stare at it over my coffee, vivid memories resurfacing, Amanda's face contorted in disgust when she called me selfish. My father's cold, dead eyes when he declared me dead to him. My mother's deafening, complicit silence. How did they find me? I had legally changed my professional name to Rebecca M. Lawson, using my middle initial to sever any public connection to the Mitchell family. My address was unlisted. My social media, non-existent. On the 4th day, I finally picked up the phone and called Professor Harris. Linda, I said, my voice tight. I need your advice. Something complicated has come up. We met for dinner at a quiet restaurant in the village. I showed her the invitation and explained the ongoing investigation. This is quite the ethical dilemma, Rebecca, she said, studying the elegant card. Professionally speaking, you should have recused yourself the moment you recognized your father's name. Shame washed over me. I know, I admitted. However, she continued, the investigation is now complete, and the evidence would have been discovered regardless of who led it. The question now is what to do about this wedding. Why would they invite you after 10 years of absolute silence? Linda took a thoughtful sip of wine. Several possibilities. Your sister might genuinely miss you. Your father might suspect an investigation and be attempting damage control. Or the Caldwell family might be performing their due diligence on their future in-laws. That night, sleep was a distant luxury. Memories, a confusing, painful tapestry of love and betrayal, flooded my mind. Amanda and I making snow angels. My father, his hands steady on the bike seat, teaching me to ride. My mother, humming softly as she brushed my hair before school. These precious, happy moments existed alongside the crushing pain of abandonment. My dreams were vivid, disturbing, me walking into the wedding, my father's face contorting in shock, my mother dropping her champagne glass, Amanda's makeup streaking with tears. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart pounding. For a week, I wrestled with my options. Ignore the invitation and continue with the fraud case? Accept the invitation, attempt reconciliation, and keep the investigation a secret? Or the nuclear option, attend the wedding and expose everything? I sought counsel from my therapist, Dr. Winters, who had been instrumental in helping me process my family trauma. What do you hope to achieve by attending? She asked gently. Closure, I answered automatically, then paused. No, that's not entirely true. Part of me wants justice. Part of me wants them to see who I've become without them. And yes, a small, ugly part wants revenge. Dr. Winters nodded. Those are human feelings, Rebecca. The question is whether acting on them will bring you peace or more pain. After yet another sleepless night, my decision solidified. I would attend the wedding. Not for reconciliation, not for a reunion forged on lies. I would go for truth. To finally shatter the suffocating cycle of secrets that had defined my family. I would bring the evidence file, but my final decision about exposing it would hinge on how the reunion unfolded. I then contacted FBI agent Samantha Taylor, with whom I'd collaborated on previous financial crime cases. I need to discuss the Mitchell investigation, I said when we met in a federal building downtown. There's a complication I haven't disclosed. I laid it all out, my relationship to James Mitchell, my reasons for not recusing myself, and the wedding invitation. Agent Taylor's expression remained professional, but I could see the glint of disappointment in her eyes. This could compromise the entire case, Miss Lawson. Defense attorneys will have a field day with your personal vendetta. The evidence stands on its own, I insisted, my voice firm. Every document is authenticated. Every witness statement corroborated. My personal connection doesn't change the facts. After a tense, lengthy discussion, we reached an agreement. The FBI would continue building their case independently. I would attend the wedding as Rebecca Mitchell, without any law enforcement involvement. If I chose to present my evidence to my family privately, that was my personal decision. But any public accusation could potentially jeopardize the federal case. We're probably 2 weeks from having enough for an arrest warrant, Agent Taylor warned as I left. Whatever you decide to do at this wedding, remember that justice will come either way. With my decision made, I began my preparations. I bought an understated, yet exquisitely expensive, black dress from Saks. Classic enough not to scream for attention, but sophisticated enough to subtly signal success. I booked appointments for hair, nails, and makeup. I reserved a room at the Madison Hotel, a mile from the country club. I created a contingency plan, sharing my itinerary with both Linda and my assistant, Natalie. If you don't hear from me by Sunday evening, I told them, my voice betraying no emotion, call this number, handing them Agent Taylor's contact information. The next day, I drove to Connecticut. The familiar landscapes of my childhood brought a fresh wave of memories with each passing mile. I checked into my hotel under the name Rebecca Lawson, not quite ready to reclaim Mitchell until the moment of maximum impact. That evening, I drove past our old house, now with different owners, then past Amanda's rehearsal dinner location. I parked across the street, watching through the restaurant windows as my family celebrated. My father looked distinguished in his tuxedo. My mother, elegant, frail. Amanda glowed with bridal happiness, her fiancé handsome and attentive at her side. They looked like the perfect family, just as we had once appeared to outsiders. I wondered what secrets the Caldwells harbored behind their political smiles. I returned to my hotel room and practiced what I might say the next day. Scenarios played out in my mind like competing movie endings. By midnight, I still didn't know exactly what I would do when faced with the family that had erased me. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wouldn't remain silent. By the way, if you're still with me, still wondering what exactly I decided to do, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. More unbelievable twists and turns are coming your way, and you won't want to miss how the story truly unfolds. *** 10 years ago, I had left as a rejected teenager with nothing but a backpack and $500. Tomorrow, I would return as Rebecca Mitchell Lawson, junior partner, investigator, and keeper of secrets that could destroy everything my father had built. I woke at dawn, my heart already a frantic drumbeat in my chest. The wedding wasn't until 2, but anxiety had me pacing my hotel room with the sunrise. I tried room service, but could only manage a few bites of dry toast. Twice, my hand hovered over my phone, almost calling Linda to tell her I was backing out. At 11, I started getting ready, deliberately drawing out the process, hoping to calm my racing mind. I styled my hair into a sophisticated updo, applied makeup that made my green eyes, so like my mother's, truly pop, and finally, I slipped into my dress. The Woman staring back at me in the mirror was a stranger, nothing like the rebellious teenager who had left home a decade ago. She looked powerful, composed, successful. But when I closed my eyes, I still felt like that terrified 18-year-old, walking away from the only home she had ever known. "You can do this, Rebecca," I whispered to my reflection. "You've survived worse than a wedding." As I gathered my purse and the fateful manila folder, a sudden, suffocating wave of panic crashed over me. My chest tightened, breaths coming in ragged gasps. I sank to the floor, my carefully applied makeup streaking with hot tears. For 15 agonizing minutes, I fought through the anxiety attack, relying on the grounding techniques my therapist had taught me. Deep breaths. Reality checks. Finally, calm enough to function, I repaired my makeup and called a car service. "Greenwich Country Club," I told the driver, my voice steadier than I felt. The venue was exactly as I remembered it. Manicured lawns sloping down to the shimmering Long Island Sound. Grand white columns framing the entrance. Floral arrangements taller than children, opulent and overwhelming. Guests in designer outfits and crisp summer suits streamed through the doors, greeted by attendants checking names against a meticulously prepared list. "Name, please," a young woman with a tablet asked politely. "Rebecca Mitchell." The name felt foreign on my tongue, a ghost from a past life. Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, Miss Mitchell, you're on the priority list." She quickly signaled to an older woman who approached immediately. "Miss Mitchell, I'm Francis, the wedding coordinator. The bride left specific instructions that you were to be escorted in personally when you arrived." Her smile seemed genuine, though her eyes held a spark of curious expectation. "Would you like to see her before the ceremony? She's getting ready upstairs." "No," I said quickly, my voice firm. "I'll just find my seat." "Of course. You're at table 3, the family table, for the reception. For the ceremony, would you prefer to sit with family in the front, or—" "Back is fine," I cut in. I wouldn't want to disrupt anything. Frances nodded, a knowing look in her eyes, and led me to the lush garden where the ceremony would take place. I chose a seat in the last row, on the aisle, perfect for a quick, unnoticed exit if needed. As the garden filled, I observed a quiet, unseen presence. Distant relatives, their faces now lined with age, moved slower. Parents of childhood friends fussed over their seating assignments. My father's medical colleagues, in their expensive suits, their wives subtly comparing jewelry. Senator Caldwell and his wife worked the crowd, exuding practiced warmth. "Rebecca? Rebecca Mitchell." I turned. My mother's sister, Aunt Catherine, was staring at me in utter disbelief. "It is you. My goodness, we all wondered if you'd really come." She embraced me awkwardly. "You look different. Grown up." 10 years will do that," I replied, forcing a brittle smile. "Yes, well," she stammered, clearly unsure how to proceed. "Such a shame. Everything that happened. Your poor mother. But water under the bridge now. Yes, families should stick together." Before I could respond, her husband called her away. As she laughed, I overheard her whisper to another guest, "That's the daughter who ran off. The troubled one." The troubled one. The label stung, a familiar wound, reinforcing the carefully constructed family narrative that had painted me as unstable, rather than a truth-teller. I slipped away, needing a moment alone, and found a bathroom. Inside the country club's opulent, marble-floored ladies' lounge, I splashed cold water on my wrists, using a calming technique Linda had taught me. The door opened, and in the mirror, I saw her. My mother. Elizabeth Mitchell froze, her hand still on the door. She had aged dramatically, thinner, paler, her once vibrant auburn hair now a soft, ethereal gray. For a raw moment, shock registered openly on her face. Then, as if pulling on a mask, she composed herself, becoming the perfect society matron once more. "Rebecca, you came." She approached carefully as if I might bolt. "Amanda will be pleased." "Will she?" I turned to face her directly, my voice laced with a decade of bitterness. "Or is my invitation just another Mitchell family performance? Invite the estranged daughter so no one asks uncomfortable questions." That's not fair, darling, she whispered, glancing nervously towards the door. I know things ended badly, but this is your sister's wedding. Let's not make a scene. Don't make a scene. The familiar, infuriating refrain of my childhood. Asterisk, don't embarrass the family. Keep secrets. Maintain appearances. Asterisk, I'm not planning to make a scene, Mother, I said, keeping my voice dangerously level. I'm just here because Amanda asked me to be. She nodded, a flicker of relief in her eyes. You look well. Successful. Her gaze traveled over my designer dress, my polished hair, the unshakable confidence in my posture. What are you doing these days? I'm an attorney, I told her, a quiet triumph in my voice. Junior partner at Donovan, Wright, and Pearson in Manhattan. Pride flickered briefly in her eyes, quickly replaced by uncertainty. Your father will be surprised to see you. I'm counting on it, I replied, my tone making her flinch slightly. Another woman entered the bathroom, offering my mother an excuse for retreat. We'll talk more at the reception, she said, squeezing my arm before hurrying out. The encounter left me shaken. I had braced myself for anger or coldness from my mother, but not this strange blend of politeness and palpable fear. She looked unwell, beyond normal aging. Something in her movements suggested a deeper frailty. Following an uncharacteristic impulse, I made my way to the bridal suite. A whimsical sign on the door read, Amanda's special day. Love, I knocked tentatively. Come in, a cheerful voice called. I opened the door to find my sister, resplendent in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids I didn't recognize. When she saw me, she froze mid-laugh, her champagne glass suspended halfway to her lips. Becca, she whispered, pure disbelief in her voice. You really came. The bridesmaids, sensing the sudden tension, mumbled excuses about checking on flowers and quickly disappeared, leaving us alone. Amanda looked breathtakingly beautiful. Her blonde hair elegantly styled, her dress a sophisticated mermaid silhouette that highlighted her slender figure. At 29, she had matured from a pretty girl into a stunning woman. I almost didn't, I admitted, my voice softer now. She set down her glass and approached me slowly, as if I might vanish. I wouldn't have blamed you. After everything, she began. Why did you invite me, Amanda? After 10 years of silence, she gestured for me to sit on a velvet settee, carefully arranging her dress as she sat beside me. It wasn't 10 years of silence on my part. I tried to find you, Becca. That first year, I even hired a private investigator with my savings. Dad found out. He threatened to cut off my college tuition. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. You never called, never emailed. I sent letters to your friend Julie's house, to your old work addresses. When those were returned, I tried social media. Did you ever check your old accounts? I shook my head. I cut all ties to my old life. I figured that out eventually, she said, twisting her hands in her lap. The truth is, I'm marrying into a political family. Thomas and we want to start fresh, with honesty. Having this weird estrangement hanging over us just felt wrong. So, this is about the Caldwell's image, I stated flatly. No. Her eyes flashed with genuine hurt. It's about me wanting my sister back before I start this new chapter. It's about regretting how I treated you when we were younger. It's about healing our family before. She trailed off. Before what? I pressed. Amanda hesitated, her gaze dropping. Mom's sick. Late stage. The news hit me harder than expected. Despite everything, this was the woman who had once tucked me in at night, who taught me to read, who had moments of profound maternal warmth amidst her alcohol-numbed detachment. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it. How long? Months, maybe, Amanda replied, her voice thick with unshed tears. She wanted to make it to the wedding. Amanda studied my face intently. You really didn't know? You haven't been monitoring the family at all. I've been busy building a life without you, I said, the words coming out sharper than intended. A gentle knock on the door interrupted us. 5 minutes until we need to start, the wedding planner called. Amanda stood, smoothing her dress. Will you stay, please? We can talk more at the reception. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Thank you for coming, she said, squeezing my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. It means everything to me. As I left the bridal suite, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions swirled through me. Amanda seemed genuinely glad to see me, a revelation that shattered the rigid narrative I had built over 10 years, that my entire family had simply, callously discarded me. The news of my mother's illness further complicated my purpose, a new, unforeseen layer of grief and uncertainty. I was so distracted that I nearly collided with my father as I rounded a corner. James Mitchell looked older, yes, but still commanded attention. His silver hair perfectly styled, his tuxedo custom-made, his posture still militarily straight. When he recognized me, his expression cycled rapidly, shock, then anger, finally settling on a cold, calculating mask. "Rebecca," he said, his voice tightly controlled. "What are you doing here?" "I was invited," I replied evenly. "By Amanda," he spat, his jaw tightening. "Without consulting me." "It's her wedding, not yours," I shot back. He glanced around nervously, noting nearby guests who were trying and failing not to stare at our tense exchange. "We should discuss this privately." "Nothing to discuss," I said, a dangerous calm in my voice. "I'm here for the ceremony, then the reception. Tomorrow I'll be gone." "Why now?" he demanded in a harsh whisper. "After all this time?" "Maybe I miss my family," I suggested, my tone making it clear I absolutely did not. Or maybe I was curious about the man Amanda's marrying. The Caldwells are an impressive political dynasty, after all. At the mention of the Caldwells, my father's composure fractured. A flicker of genuine fear crossed his eyes before he masked it. "Whatever you're planning, don't. This day is important for connections that go far beyond our family." "Connections," I repeated, a dry, bitter echo. Always the pragmatist. He stepped closer, his voice dropping further. "Why did they let you in? You weren't on the guest list I approved." So, he had tried to block me. Interesting. "Amanda must have overruled you," I said, enjoying his discomfort. "She seems quite determined to have her sister at her wedding." Music began playing in the garden, a gentle signal that the ceremony was about to commence. My father's friend and attorney, Richard Porter, approached quickly, a panicked look on his face. "James, they're ready for you to escort Amanda down the aisle." He noticed me and did a visible double take. "Is this?" "My daughter, Rebecca," my father confirmed stiffly. "She'll be leaving shortly." "Actually," I corrected him, my voice clear and strong. "I'll be staying for the reception. Table 3, I believe. Family table." The color drained from my father's face. He exchanged a frantic, meaningful look with Porter, who nodded repeatedly, his expression grim. "We'll continue this discussion later," he snarled, before walking away to fulfill his father of the bride duties. As he went, I saw him whispering urgently to Porter. They were worried about my presence. And they should be. I've seen firsthand how families can spin elaborate webs of lies and secrets, trapping everyone inside. If you're finding this story hitting close to home, I deeply appreciate you giving it a thumbs up so others who might need to hear it can find it. Too, the ceremony was about to end, and soon I would be facing the family that erased me at the reception. Stay with me. The confrontation you've been waiting for is coming up next. The wedding ceremony was, as expected, picture perfect. Amanda glowed, a vision in white, exchanging vows with Thomas, who looked at her with genuine adoration. My father, the consummate performer, played his role flawlessly, the proud patriarch giving away his daughter, his speech about family values and commitment drawing appreciative murmurs from the guests. My mother dabbed at her tears with a monogrammed handkerchief, a flawless facade of maternal emotion. Senator Caldwell beamed, reveling in the alliance his family was forming with a respected medical dynasty. Only I knew what a grotesque charade it all was. During the transition to the reception, I deliberately kept to myself, a silent observer. I watched from a distance as guests mingled over cocktails on the terrace. Several times, I caught my father watching me nervously, his hushed conversations with Richard Porter becoming more agitated. Twice, my mother started towards me, then hesitated, changing her mind and retreating into the crowd. The reception began with a lavish dinner in the main ballroom. True to the seating chart, I was placed at table 3, the immediate family table, with my parents, the Caldwells, and Thomas's sister. The tension at our table was a palpable, living thing, barely concealed beneath a veneer of forced pleasantries. "So, Rebecca," Senator Caldwell addressed me directly, his tone genial. "Amanda tells us you're an attorney in New York. Impressive career path." "Thank you, Senator," I replied, my voice calm. "I specialize in financial crimes." My father choked slightly on his champagne. The senator, oblivious to the sudden tremor, continued, "Fascinating area. Any interesting cases you can share?" "Without confidential details, of course." "Actually," I said, my gaze locking onto my father's, "I recently completed an investigation into healthcare fraud. A prominent surgeon, performing unnecessary procedures, falsifying records, taking kickbacks, the usual pattern of greed over patient care." My father's knuckles whitened around his fork. My mother looked utterly bewildered. "Sounds like important work," Thomas's mother commented, a polite smile on her face. "Protecting vulnerable patients from exploitation." "That's exactly how I see it, Mrs. Caldwell," I replied, my smile thin. "No one should profit from unnecessary suffering." Before the conversation could escalate, the wedding planner, ever efficient, announced it was time for speeches. My father stood, straightened his tuxedo jacket, and walked confidently to the microphone at the front of the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice booming with practiced charm, "as father of the bride, it's my privilege to welcome you all to this joyous occasion." His speech was eloquent, a masterful performance. He spoke of Amanda's childhood achievements, her kind heart, her bright future with Thomas. He waxed poetic about family legacy and values, about the sacred trust between parent and child. With each hypocritical, carefully chosen word, my resolve hardened, crystallizing into an unyielding certainty. When he finished, to appreciative applause, the wedding planner consulted her list. "Next, we'll hear from the maid of honor, then the best man." I stood up. "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through the polite murmur, "I'd like to say something." The planner looked utterly flustered. "You're not on the program, Miss Mitchell." "I'm the bride's sister," I stated firmly, my gaze unwavering. "Surely that counts for something." From the head table, Amanda gave a small, almost imperceptible nod to the planner, who reluctantly gestured towards the microphone. The entire room fell silent. An expectant hush. I walked to the front, my father still standing stiffly at the side of the stage, his expression a chilling warning. My mother looked terrified. The Caldwells watched with polite, yet growing interest, completely unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. I took the microphone, surveying the room. It was packed with Connecticut's elite, doctors, politicians, old money families. These were the people who had attended parties at our house when I was growing up, who had watched our perfect family performance for years. "For those who don't know me," I began, my voice clear, steady, cutting through the silence, "I'm Rebecca Mitchell, Amanda's older sister." I paused, letting my gaze sweep across their curious, expectant faces. "Some of you might be wondering where I've been for the past decade, since I haven't exactly been present at family functions." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Good. I had their attention. 10 years ago, on my 18th birthday, I was given an ultimatum by my father. Keep quiet about certain family matters, including his multiple affairs, or leave and never return. Gasps erupted. Whispers exploded throughout the ballroom. My father lunged forward, but I continued before he could interrupt. I chose truth over comfort. Integrity over family loyalty. That night, I walked out of our house with $500 and a backpack. For the first year, I was homeless. I slept in shelters, worked minimum wage jobs, and eventually put myself through community college while working 3 jobs. Not once, during that entire time, did my family check if I was alive or dead. Amanda was openly crying now, Thomas holding her hand tightly. My mother had buried her face in her hands. My father was frantically signaling to Porter. Through sheer determination and the unexpected kindness of strangers who became my real family, I eventually graduated from Columbia Law School and became a junior partner at Donovan Wright and Pearson, specializing in financial crimes. I opened the slim manila folder I had brought to the podium, the papers within a whisper-thin testament to years of meticulous work. Which brings me to the real reason I accepted Amanda's invitation. My voice dropped, holding their rapt attention. 6 months ago, my firm was assigned to investigate potential Medicare fraud at Princeton Medical Group. Specifically, the practice of Dr. James Mitchell, who has been performing unnecessary cardiac procedures on elderly patients, falsifying test results to justify interventions, and taking massive kickbacks from medical device companies. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Senator Caldwell stood abruptly, his face ashen, his political instincts screaming. My father lunged towards the stage, a desperate, furious animal, but 2 of Thomas's burly military friends, quick to react, blocked his path. I have here, I announced, holding up several papers, bank records showing payments through shell companies, testimony from nurses and technicians who were pressured to falsify data, documentation showing that over the past 8 years, my father has performed at least 300 unnecessary surgeries, resulting in 12 patient deaths and millions in fraudulent Medicare claims. She's lying, my father roared, his voice hoarse with rage. This is revenge from a mentally unstable daughter. She has no evidence. Actually, I replied calmly, my gaze unblinking. I have copies of everything. And the FBI has the originals. They've been building a case independently of my investigation. As if on cue, the ballroom doors swung open. Agent Taylor entered, flanked by 2 other federal agents. They hadn't been part of my plan, but clearly, they had been monitoring the situation, waiting. James Mitchell, Agent Taylor announced, her voice cutting through the rising pandemonium. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of healthcare fraud, false claims, and criminal negligence resulting in death. Chaos. Utter, absolute chaos. Guests sprang to their feet, phones recording the unprecedented scene. The Caldwells huddled together, security personnel rushing to surround them. My father was handcuffed, still protesting his innocence, still demanding his attorney. Through the swirling commotion, I saw my mother collapse into her chair, a security guard already calling for medical assistance. Amanda pushed through the bewildered crowd, her pristine wedding dress billowing around her. How could you? She cried, reaching the podium, her voice choked with anguish. Today of all days? But as I looked into her eyes, there was something unexpected there. Not just anger, but a profound relief, as if an unbearable burden had finally been lifted. You knew, I realized, the truth dawning on me. You suspected something wasn't right. She looked away, her gaze flickering to the floor. I had concerns. Comments Dad made that didn't add up. But I never imagined this scale. Amanda. Senator Caldwell's voice cut through the air, sharp and urgent. We're leaving now. Thomas approached, his face grave, conflicted. Amanda, my father insists we need to distance ourselves immediately. His campaign. Amanda looked between her shining wedding ring, my face, and Thomas, visibly torn between her past and her future. Before she could respond, my mother's doctor, a kind-faced woman, approached us. Miss Mitchell, your mother is asking for both of you. In a quiet side room, my mother lay on a sofa, an oxygen mask over her face. She looked so fragile, the cancer having clearly ravaged her body far more than I had realized. When she saw us enter together, she removed the mask with a shaking hand. My girls, she whispered, a faint smile on her lips. Together again. Amanda knelt beside her, her wedding gown pooling around her. Mom, save your strength. No, my mother's voice, though weak, was surprisingly firm. I need to say this while I still can. She looked at me, her eyes surprisingly clear. Rebecca, I knew about the affairs. About the money. Not everything, but enough. I was a coward. The alcohol just made it easier to pretend. Tears streamed down my face. Why didn't you support me that night? Fear, she admitted, a single tear tracing a path down her own cheek. Your father controlled everything. The money, the house, our social standing. Anne. I was already sick then, though we kept it private. Early symptoms that I ignored. She took a labored breath. I've regretted my silence every single day since you left. She turned to Amanda. And you, my perfect daughter, who followed all the rules. I watched you become what I was. Trapped in a life of appearances. She glanced towards the door, where we could faintly hear the Caldwells arguing with wedding staff. Be careful of the cage you're choosing, sweetheart. Mrs. Mitchell, a nurse, interrupted gently. We need to get you to the hospital for evaluation. As they prepared to transfer my mother to an ambulance, she grabbed my hand with surprising strength. The letters, she whispered, her voice fading. In my blue jewelry box. I kept them from you both. Before I could ask what she meant, the medical team whisked her away. Amanda and I stood in stunned silence, processing the dizzying cascade of revelations. Through the window, we could see the reception in utter disarray. Guests leaving in a hurry. FBI agents collecting statements. My father being placed into a federal vehicle. Letters. Amanda finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know, I admitted. But I intend to find out. Thomas entered, his expression conflicted, his usually handsome face strained. Amanda, my parents are insisting we leave immediately. They're talking about annulment. Damage control. Amanda looked at her wedding ring, then at me, then back at Thomas. Tell them I'll be out shortly. When he left, she turned to me, her eyes resolute. 10 years ago, I betrayed you by staying silent. I won't make that mistake again. She took a deep, shaky breath. Did you come here just for revenge, Becca? Or is there some part of you that wanted to reconnect? Both, I admitted, the raw truth tumbling out. I wanted justice. But seeing you, I've missed my sister. She nodded, tears streaking her carefully applied makeup. This isn't how I imagined my wedding day ending. Political scandal, federal arrests, family secrets exposed. I'm sorry about the timing, I said, and I truly meant it. Don't be, she replied, a faint, weary smile touching her lips. Maybe this is exactly what needed to happen. She squeezed my hand tightly. We have a lot to figure out. About Mom. About these letters. About what happens next. From outside, Senator Caldwell's voice boomed, impatient. Amanda. Now. She grimaced. I need to deal with my new in-laws. She paused at the door, her gaze lingering. But this isn't over, Becca. We're talking tomorrow. As Amanda left to navigate the political fallout of her wedding day, I remained in the quiet room, emotions washing over me in tumultuous waves. The justice I had sought for a decade had finally arrived. But it felt hollow. That triumph was overshadowed by the shattering revelations about my mother's illness, her profound regrets, and the mysterious letters she'd mentioned. I had come to expose secrets, to destroy the family that had rejected me. Instead, I found that secrets had been kept from me as well. Years of attempts at contact. Regrets unspoken. Complexities I hadn't even begun to imagine. The perfect family image was shattered forever. But in its place, amidst the wreckage, something unexpected had emerged. The fragile, terrifying possibility of truth. The day after the wedding, my family's carefully constructed world imploded, splashed across every newspaper in the Northeast. Headlines screamed, prominent surgeon arrested at daughter's wedding. Caldwell in-law scandal. Medicare fraud allegations shake political dynasty. My name appeared in several articles, identified both as the estranged daughter and the attorney who helped build the case. I checked out of my hotel early, narrowly avoiding the swarm of reporters who had somehow discovered my location. Amanda called as I was driving back to New York, her voice thick with tears. The Caldwells are in full crisis mode, she choked out. Thomas's father has his entire campaign team working on distancing themselves from Dad. They're pushing for an annulment. What do you want? I asked, a quiet question that I realized, with a jolt, probably no one else had bothered to ask her. A long, agonizing silence followed. I don't know anymore, Becca. Everything I thought I knew about our family, about my future, it's all changed in 24 hours. Where are you now? At a hotel near the country club. The Caldwells insisted we cancel the honeymoon. They've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow where Thomas and I are supposed to express shock and dismay about Dad's alleged crimes. Alleged asterisk? I repeated, a sharp edge to my voice. Amanda, there's nothing alleged about it. I've seen the evidence. I know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I believe you. That's why this is so hard. She took a shaky breath. Can we meet? I went to the house this morning while Mom was at the hospital. I found the jewelry box she mentioned. 3 hours later, we sat in my Brooklyn apartment. A small, blue velvet box rested between us on my coffee table. Amanda looked utterly exhausted, still in yesterday's clothes, her wedding ring conspicuously absent. You should open it, she said, her voice hoarse. She mentioned letters. Inside, nestled together, were dozens of envelopes, some yellowed with age, neatly organized with rubber bands. The first bundle was addressed to me, in Amanda's familiar handwriting, postmarked weekly for the first year after I left. The second bundle contained letters from my mother to me, never sent. The third, and most surprising, bundle held letters addressed to Amanda, in my handwriting. I never received these, Amanda said, holding up letters I had written to her during my first 2 years away. I wrote to you every week that first year, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. When nothing came back, I started writing less frequently. But I never stopped completely. I wrote to you too, she replied, for 2 years, until I finally convinced myself you didn't care. We spent hours reading the intercepted correspondence. Amanda's letters were heartbreaking, filled with apologies, updates about her life, desperate pleas for me to come home. My letters to her chronicled my struggles, my small victories, and eventually, news about college. My mother's unsent letters were a raw, private torment. Her deep knowledge of my father's affairs and financial irregularities, her cancer diagnosis that had come and gone into remission before its devastating return, her profound regret at not standing up for me. She kept these from both of us, I said, anger and grief warring in my chest. She let us believe we had abandoned each other. But why? Amanda asked, tears blurring her vision. What purpose did it serve? Control, I suggested, the chilling realization dawning. Dad's control over her, over the family narrative. If we reconnected, his carefully constructed version of events might be challenged. Amanda nodded slowly. He convinced me you were unstable, attention-seeking. That contacting you would only encourage your destructive behavior. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I should have tried harder to find you. You did try, I reminded her, gesturing to the letters. We both did. As evening fell, Amanda received increasingly urgent calls from the Caldwell's campaign manager. After the 5th insistent ring, she finally answered, putting it on speaker. Amanda, we need you at the senator's house tomorrow morning to rehearse the press conference. The statement has been prepared. You just need to look appropriately shocked and supportive of Thomas. What if I don't attend? She asked, her voice shaking. A long pause on the other end. That's not an option, Amanda. The prenuptial agreement you signed includes specific provisions about family loyalty and public appearances. If you refuse, you'll be in breach of contract. The annulment would be immediate, and you'd be liable for damages to the campaign. After hanging up, Amanda looked utterly shell-shocked. I knew the prenup was extensive, she whispered, but I didn't realize. I was so focused on the fairy tale. You don't have to go through with their plan, I said, my voice gentle but firm. You have options. Like what, Becca? I have no income of my own. My trust fund is contingent on Dad's approval, which obviously I've lost now. My entire career has been planning charity events for my mother's friends. I'm 30 years old with a useless art history degree and no real work experience. Stay here, I offered impulsively, the words surprising even me. My guest room is yours for as long as you need. And I know plenty of people who could help you find legitimate work. She looked around my apartment, modest by Mitchell's standards, but comfortable, clearly mine, a testament to my independent life. You really built a life without any help from them, didn't you? Not without any help, I corrected, a small smile touching my lips. Just not their help. I had Professor Harris, friends who believed in me, mentors who saw my potential. That night, Amanda slept in my guest room while I lay awake, processing the seismic shifts in our family dynamics. The justice I had sought had been served. My father would face charges, his reputation utterly destroyed. But the revelation of those intercepted letters changed everything. My sister hadn't abandoned me. My mother had carried profound regrets. The black and white narrative I had constructed over 10 years now held shades of gray I never anticipated. The next morning, I called into work, explaining I needed personal time for family matters. William Donovan was understanding, but concerned about potential conflicts of interest. The firm may need to officially distance itself from your personal connection to the Mitchell case, he explained. Not disciplinary action, just procedural cleanup. I understand, I said, relieved I wasn't being fired outright. Amanda emerged from the guest room looking more rested, but still lost. Mom called, she said softly. She's being discharged today. The cancer treatments have been suspended during this crisis. Where will she go? Home, I guess, though with Dad's assets frozen pending investigation, I'm not sure how long she'll be able to stay there. We visited my mother that afternoon. Elizabeth Mitchell looked tiny in her hospital bed, but her eyes were clearer, more present than I had seen in years. You found the letters, she said when we entered together. I nodded, sitting beside her. Why, Mom? Why keep us apart? She closed her eyes briefly. Your father convinced me it was for the best. That contact would only hurt both of you. And I was weak, afraid of losing what little stability I had. She looked at me directly, her gaze unwavering. It was unforgivable. But I'm asking for your forgiveness anyway. I'm working on it, I said honestly. It's going to take time. Time is the one thing I don't have much of, she replied with surprising calm. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer doesn't leave much room for long reconciliations. Amanda took her other hand. We're here now, Mom. Both of us. My mother squeezed our hands, a fragile but firm grip. Then that's more than I deserve, and everything I could ask for. Over the next few weeks, a new, tentative rhythm emerged. Amanda officially moved into my guest room, choosing to break from the Caldwells despite their looming legal threats. My mother moved into a hospice facility near my apartment, where Amanda and I visited daily, sharing quiet moments and painful truths. My father remained in federal custody, denied bail due to flight risk. The media attention, initially intense, gradually began to subside. Reporters, who had camped outside my apartment and even followed us to the hospice, eventually moved on. The story had everything: medical fraud, political scandal, high-stakes family drama. Amanda and I gave no interviews, focusing instead on rebuilding our fractured relationship and caring for our dying mother. At work, I was removed from all healthcare fraud cases, a necessary precaution, but otherwise allowed to continue my duties. The FBI investigation proceeded without my involvement, building an airtight case against my father and several accomplices, including his office manager and 2 other doctors in his practice. Amanda, though, struggled profoundly with her new reality. She went from being a senator's daughter-in-law-to-be to a scandal-adjacent civilian, from a wealthy socialite to an unemployed 30-year-old. But she also showed remarkable resilience. She started applying for jobs in museum administration, eventually taking a temporary position at a local gallery. I always wanted to work in the art world, she confessed one evening as we shared takeout in my living room, her voice tinged with a long-buried yearning. But Dad insisted it wasn't a Mitchell-worthy career. What else did you want that you didn't pursue because of him? I asked softly. She thought for a moment. Travel that wasn't just to luxury resorts. Friends who weren't socially advantageous. A relationship based on love, rather than appropriate pedigree. She smiled sadly. I was the good daughter who stayed. But in some ways, you were freer by leaving. 1 month after the wedding, we received word that my father wanted to see us. Against my better judgment, I agreed to accompany Amanda to the federal detention center. James Mitchell had aged years in weeks. His designer clothes replaced by a drab jumpsuit, his once commanding presence diminished by confinement. He nonetheless attempted to control the conversation from the moment we sat across from him. This case will be thrown out, he began, without a single greeting. My attorney is filing motions to suppress evidence obtained under false pretenses by a family member with a vendetta. The FBI built their case independently, I reminded him, my voice flat. My investigation was just the starting point. He dismissed this with a dismissive wave. I need you both to make statements supporting me. Character witnesses. Family solidarity. Amanda and I exchanged glances. That's why you wanted to see us? She asked, her voice trembling. Not to apologize? Or explain? There's nothing to apologize for, he insisted, his voice rising. Everything I did was for this family. To give you the life you deserved. By performing unnecessary surgeries on elderly patients? I challenged, my anger finally breaking through. By risking lives for profit? By building a practice that could support our lifestyle, he countered, his own anger flaring. Medicine is a business, Rebecca. I simply maximized returns. People died, Dad, Amanda said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Actual people. He had the decency to look momentarily uncomfortable before his defenses reasserted themselves. Medical complications happen. That's why we have malpractice insurance. We left 30 minutes later, having refused his demands for support. In the parking lot, Amanda broke down completely. He's still trying to control us, she sobbed, burying her face in my shoulder. Still can't admit he was wrong. I held her, my own emotions a complex mix of vindication and profound sorrow. He may never change, Amanda. Some people can't face their own failures. Then we need to make sure we're not like him, she said, straightening her shoulders anew. Resolve in her voice. No more family secrets. No more lies between us. As we drove back to the city, a heavy weight I had carried for 10 years slowly began to lift. The justice I had sought was unfolding through legal channels. The sister I had mourned for was back in my life. The mother I had resented was showing genuine remorse in her final months. None of it erased the past, the rejection, the years of struggle, the pain of abandonment. But it offered something I hadn't expected when I received that wedding invitation, the fragile, yet powerful, possibility of healing. 6 months after Amanda's wedding became the site of a federal arrest, autumn painted Central Park in fiery colors, a vivid masterpiece visible from my office window. On my desk, a new addition, a framed photo of Amanda and me at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, arms around each other, genuine, unburdened smiles on our faces. Next to it, a small reminder card for my mother's hospice care schedule. James Mitchell's trial was set for January. The prosecution had meticulously built an overwhelming case, mountains of financial records, harrowing patient testimonies, cooperating witnesses from his own medical practice. His attorney, as expected, tried to use my involvement in the initial investigation to suppress evidence, but the judge ruled unequivocally that the FBI's independent work was admissible, regardless of how the case originated. My father, stubbornly clinging to his manufactured reality, refused to accept a plea deal, maintaining his innocence despite the crushing weight of evidence. His medical license had been suspended, his assets frozen, his once unassailable reputation utterly destroyed. The house in Connecticut, our former perfect home, was in foreclosure, its contents being cataloged for a potential sale to compensate victims. My mother's condition deteriorated rapidly. The immense stress of the scandal seemed to accelerate her decline, though she insisted, with a surprising spark of defiance, that having the family's secrets finally exposed was liberating. I've lived in beautiful prisons for decades, Rebecca, she told me during one of her increasingly rare lucid afternoons. First my parents' expectations, then your father's control. I don't mind dying, darling. I just regret not living authentically first. Those moments of clarity became precious, fleeting gifts as her pain management regimen intensified. Amanda, with a newfound sense of purpose, had taken family medical leave from her new job at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, spending every possible moment at the hospice, often sleeping in the recliner beside our mother's bed. My own career had stabilized after the initial upheaval. While I was no longer involved in healthcare fraud cases, my expertise in financial crimes remained invaluable to the firm. William Donovan, my senior partner, even suggested I might be considered for full partner in the next round of promotions. Your work on the Mitchell case showed extraordinary diligence and attention to detail, he said during my performance review. Setting aside the personal complications, the investigation itself was exemplary. Professor Harris, Linda, as she now insisted I call her, had become a regular visitor to my apartment, often bringing home-cooked meals and offering quiet emotional support as we navigated the relentless family crisis. You've come full circle, she observed one evening as we shared dinner, a gentle smile on her face. From the homeless student fighting to survive, to the successful attorney bringing justice and rebuilding family bonds. Not quite full circle, I corrected her, shaking my head. I'm not the same person who left Connecticut 10 years ago. I don't want reconciliation on their terms anymore. I want truth, whatever that looks like. On a crisp October morning, the call I had been both expecting and dreading finally came. Amanda's voice was steady, but thick with tears. Mom's gone, she whispered. She went peacefully in her sleep. The funeral was held 3 days later in a small chapel near the hospice. Despite the Mitchell name once commanding a significant social presence in Connecticut, the attendance was sparse. A few loyal friends of my mother's, distant relatives, Amanda and me, and a handful of dedicated hospice staff who had grown fond of Elizabeth. My father was permitted to attend under guard, dressed in a somber suit instead of his prison jumpsuit. His handcuffs were removed for the service, but 2 imposing U.S. Marshals flanked him throughout. He looked diminished, his once confident posture replaced by stooped shoulders, his commanding presence reduced to that of an aging, broken man facing the dual losses of freedom and his wife of 35 years. The service was simple, honest, and profoundly moving. There were no grandiose eulogies about a perfect wife and mother, but rather a quiet acknowledgement of a complex woman who had made mistakes, but had, in her final days, sought redemption. Amanda spoke beautifully about our mother's artistic sensibilities, her deep knowledge of literature, the fleeting moments of warmth that had punctuated our otherwise formal upbringing. I shared memories of her teaching me to play piano, our trips to museums in New York, the genuine joy she found in beautiful things. Neither of us mentioned her alcoholism, her enabling of our father's behavior, or her role in keeping us apart. Those truths had been acknowledged privately, between us and with her, before she died. The public service needed no further unburdening. After the final prayer, attendees filed past her casket to pay their respects. When my father's turn came, he stood motionless, staring down at his wife's peaceful face. For a fleeting moment, his mask slipped, and genuine, raw grief transformed his features. He placed his hand gently on the casket, whispered something only he and Elizabeth would ever share, then allowed the marshals to quietly lead him away. Outside the chapel, as attendees dispersed for the cemetery procession, my father was permitted a brief moment to speak with us before returning to custody. Your mother loved you both, he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. Despite everything we know, Amanda replied, her voice firm. She told us. He nodded, looking suddenly older than his 63 years, utterly defeated. I'd like to see you again, he mumbled, before the trial. Amanda looked at me, deferring to my decision. We'll think about it, I said, neither committing nor outright refusing. As the marshals led him to the transport vehicle, he turned back once more. I did love her, you know, in my way. Your way, I repeated, the words hanging in the crisp autumn air. That was always the problem, wasn't it? After the burial, Amanda and I returned to my apartment, exhausted by grief and the heavy weight of family history. We sat in comfortable silence for a long time, sipping tea, watching the city lights emerge as evening fell. What happens now? Amanda finally asked, her voice small. We keep going, I said simply. One day at a time. In the weeks that followed, we established new routines. Amanda found an apartment in my neighborhood, close enough for regular dinners together, but allowing us both our independence. She thrived in her museum role, her deep knowledge of art history finally finding productive application. I continued my legal career, gradually shifting my focus towards advocacy for elderly victims of financial exploitation, a cause that now resonated with me on a deeply personal level. We visited our childhood home one last time before it was sold at auction. Walking through those empty rooms, once the entirety of our world, was surreal. The formal dining room where countless silent family dinners had unfolded. The grand staircase I had stormed up during teenage arguments. Amanda's bedroom, with its faded pink walls. My own room, stripped bare, devoid of personality after my abrupt departure. In my mother's closet, we found a small, fireproof box containing birth certificates, old photographs, and a journal she had kept sporadically over the years. Reading it together, sitting on the floor of her empty bedroom, provided both pain and unexpected healing. Her private thoughts revealed a woman far more self-aware than we had ever realized. Trapped in a marriage she had entered for security rather than love. Fighting depression with alcohol and denial. "I don't think I want any of the furniture or artwork," Amanda said as we prepared to leave, her voice quiet. "Too many memories." "Agreed," I replied. "But I'll take Mom's piano if possible. That holds good memories." The auction proceeds went primarily to a victims' compensation fund, with a small portion reserved for my mother's final expenses. The Mitchell family wealth, built on fraud and maintained through appearances, was systematically dismantled through legal proceedings. January arrived, bringing with it both snow and my father's trial. Amanda and I attended only the opening and closing statements, sparing ourselves the gruesome, detailed testimony about patients who had suffered unnecessary procedures. The evidence was overwhelming, the prosecution methodical and relentless. After 8 days of trial and 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts. At sentencing, the judge showed little leniency. "Dr. Mitchell," he stated, his voice ringing with authority, "you violated the most sacred trust between physician and patient. Your actions were motivated by greed, sustained by deception, and resulted in needless suffering and death. The court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, asking for our reaction. Amanda stepped forward, poised and resolute despite the blinding cameras. "Today brings accountability, not joy," she said, her voice clear. "There are no winners when trusted professionals abuse their power. Our thoughts are with the patients and families affected by these crimes." As the media attention finally faded, Amanda and I established a new family tradition, Sunday dinners at my apartment, with Linda Harris and a rotating group of friends who had supported us through the ordeal. These gatherings became our chosen family, bound by loyalty and honesty rather than obligation and appearances. One Sunday evening, as spring returned to the city, Amanda raised her glass for a toast. "To Rebecca," she said, her eyes shining with warmth, "who had the courage to leave and the strength to return. Who chose truth over comfort and justice over silence." Linda added, "And to both of you, for rebuilding what was broken on a foundation of honesty this time." Later that night, after everyone had left, Amanda helped me clean up, our comfortable silence a testament to our profound reconnection. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't left that night?" she asked, carefully drying a wine glass. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I wouldn't have become who I am. And you wouldn't have become who you are now." "True," she nodded. "Though it took losing everything to find myself." "Not everything," I corrected, bumping her shoulder affectionately. "You still have me." On my office desk, that framed photo of us serves as a daily reminder. Family isn't defined by blood alone, but by who stands beside you through truth, not lies. The sister I had lost and found again. The path forward we were building together. The Mitchell family, as it once existed, was utterly, irrevocably gone. The facade of perfection had been shattered into a million pieces. The patriarch was imprisoned, the matriarch buried, the ancestral home sold, the wealth dispersed. But from those ruins, from that painful, necessary destruction, something far more authentic had emerged. A relationship between sisters, forged in honesty. A chosen family, built on genuine connection. And the profound, liberating freedom that comes with living in truth. I still visit my father occasionally at the Federal Correctional Facility in Pennsylvania. Our conversations remain difficult, often strained. His ability to accept true responsibility is still limited by the defensive walls he spent decades building around himself. But in our own imperfect ways, we are both trying to understand each other. Some wounds, I've learned, may never fully heal. But acknowledgement, however grudging, is always a beginning. The journey from that chilly October night, 10 years ago, when I walked out of my perfect home with nothing but $500 and a backpack, to today, has been longer, stranger, and more heartbreaking than I could have ever imagined. The justice I sought came at a profoundly high cost, not just to my father, but to everyone involved. The reunion with my sister brought a torrent of both pain and profound healing. The truth about my family revealed complexities that shattered the simple narrative of villains and victims I had constructed. If there's a lesson in all of this, in all the years of silence and the explosive revelations, perhaps it's this: family secrets inevitably surface. And the longer they're buried, the more catastrophic the damage when they're finally unearthed. Or maybe it's that true family stands by you through honesty, not convenience, through unwavering loyalty to truth, not just to blood. Or simply, that it's never too late to rebuild what was broken, if you are truly willing to start with truth, no matter how painful. Has your family experienced moments where truth and loyalty collided? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and speaking your truth, even when it meant risking everything? Your experiences matter, and I truly want to hear them. So please, share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of family secrets, betrayal, and eventual justice resonated with you on any level, please hit that like button so others might find it and perhaps feel a little less alone. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about family dynamics and the complicated, messy, but ultimately healing journey toward truth. Thank you for witnessing my journey from family outcast to finally bringing long overdue justice and rebuilding what was broken. Sometimes, the hardest truths lead to the most necessary healing.